Hi, everyone. Pooja Paturi, Director of Digital Payments and Fraud Prevention at the Canadian Bankers Association. And in that role, for the past year, I've had the privilege of leading the Anti-Scam Alliance. So this has been mentioned already today. This is a voluntary, public-private, coordinated effort to overcome scams holistically in the ecosystem. So as of right now, we have 50 organizations participating, with over 200 participants from those organizations, coming together to understand how we can better share data across sectors. And this includes telecoms, digital platforms like Meta, Google, all of the financial institutions, payment service providers, government regulators, and law enforcement partners to address scams.
Hi, my name is Nima Golchini, and I'm head of pre-sales for ENEA, who provides messaging abuse protection, revenue protection, and platform for enforcement of the regulatory requirement, code of the conduct for either mobile operators or CPaaS players in the market.
Hi, everyone. Melissa Blassingame, our VP of Partner Alliances. I work closely with carriers, ecosystem partners, to drive commercial growth and shape industry standards and on various products and initiatives. And I've done that globally in the last couple of years. So I've had a unique perspective. I have about 17 years in the carrier space, specifically with voice and numbers. Lots of fun there. And now, 6 years at Twilio, I sort of say, I'm trying to simplify the complexity of telecommunications and translate that to the software ecosystem, and it's been incredible. Thank you.
And Catalin Badea, VP of Product Management at netnumber. I've been with netnumber since 2020. For those who don't know netnumber, we are the leading number intelligence as a service provider. And what I mean by that is that we empower our customers with phone number data for routing, rating, and billing, authentication, and fraud prevention, which is going to be today's topic.
Thank you. So Pooja, do you mind providing us a background on some of the scams and fraud types that are most impacting Canadians?
Absolutely. So I don't think this is going to be news. Scams are growing exponentially. In fact, they've almost doubled in the past 5 years, and we expect them to continue growing exponentially. In terms of who the targets are, they're everyone. So I know that there is an ongoing narrative that seniors are more prone to scams, which they are targeted, and they likely will have greater financial losses than other segments that are being targeted. But we are also seeing youth, especially Gen Z, being targeted for scams, new methods and innovations in scam types that are targeting different demographics. So just want to say everyone is a target, and that is who we're aiming to protect. In terms of scam types that are impacting Canadians right now, investment scams are the very clear answer. They make up half of the financial losses that have been reported in the last year, and we expect large financial losses to continue going through those mechanisms as well. In terms of other evolving scam types, one that we see growing rapidly is re-victimization. So this is a case where someone has already been a victim to a scam, and another scammer will reach out to them to offer support for them getting out of the hole that they've gotten themselves into, and offering support financially, personal support, emotional support, and these victims are re-victimized again. So we are seeing the rise of that and other scam types that are really driven by the fact that we are in a post-COVID world, we're in a remote environment, and people are taking advantage of the fact that we are not interfacing with people face-to-face and impersonating. In terms of numbers, right now, as of 2024, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre had reported there were $638 million lost in fraud by Canadians. That is expected to be around 5 to 10% of the real number. So if we extrapolate that out, we're anticipating around $14 billion, actually, that's been lost to fraud by Canadians. It's just underreported. People don't go forward, or they don't know where to report. So that's something we're aiming to work on as well. This is not insignificant. It's 0.5% of Canada's GDP, and it's something that we are really focusing on driving down losses on.
And so can you talk a little bit about some of the initiatives? I think we heard one earlier today, or I'm sure you're involved in that, but if you could give us a little bit more information on some of the initiatives the CBA is working on.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we have started almost a year to this day, what we call the Anti-Scam Alliance for now, name still pending. So essentially what this was what we saw in other jurisdictions, fraud numbers going up. We saw the same thing here. And what we wanted to do was address the root of the problem. The root of the problem is taking scammers out of the system. It's not reimbursing your consumer or consoling your consumer after they've faced a financial loss. It's stopping the scammer from deploying the same scam to another potential victim. What that means is we need to focus on prosecution. I already spoke about the fact that fraud is severely underreported. This gives our law enforcement less than nothing to work with at this point in terms of building a case and actually being able to prosecute. So in terms of what we are focusing on is data sharing between private sector, between FIs, between telcos, between the digital platforms, and doing so in a way that it can be leveraged by law enforcement and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre to be able to actually prosecute and take the scammers out of the system. So in terms of how we're actually going about doing that, there are a few mechanisms we have in play. So one, we're working on increasing intra-sector sharing within your own sector, and then building that out to what does that mean from a cross-sector perspective. So we really looked at what are the sector-specific restrictions, what are the restrictions in sharing cross-sector. You're regulated by different people, you have different expectations. If you're in Canada, you have provincial and national laws to follow. How do we overcome all that noise and align on base values that we can share data with? In terms of other initiatives, we're working closely with the tech platforms to ensure that we get a line of sight into what they need from the ecosystem. So if I am, for example, Microsoft, I'm getting 3 trillion scam calls a day just in Canada alone. How do I triage? How do I know what is actually scam and what is actually a nuisance or something else that's been forwarded? So it's helping big tech triage and also helping them understand what the ecosystem needs from them to be able to stop scams as well. In addition to that, we are leading a national education awareness campaign that's already been spoken about today. And in terms of our near-term priorities and how we plan on enhancing data sharing across sectors is one, right out of the gate, our first project is going to be development of a pan-Canadian scam taxonomy. So this is working with all sectors that have a role in the scam lifecycle, so FIs, telcos, platforms, regulators, so on, aligning with each other on how we are referring to scams, how we are reporting them. Once we're able to speak the same language, that makes data sharing that much easier. So those are the near-term priorities for us.
That's great. Melissa, what is your organization doing to help combat fraud?
Yeah, so, I mean, it starts at the front gate, right? With a platform like Twilio, we have to do an impeccable job with KYC. And so that is, you know, ensuring the bad actors don't get through to begin a call or text in the first place. You know, we've recently done face match, selfie checks to, you know, once there's enough sort of flags that go off, we do more and more checks, right? And it's needed because of the impersonation scams on the rise. So we've also flagged high-risk countries and disabled them from calling or texting +1 numbers. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of getting us in the right direction, but there's always new things to consider, right? And we're always, you know, refreshing our models using AI, ML. It's a constant daily battle, but, you know, we're on the cutting edge of trying to make it right.
Catalin?
Sure. So we have a long tradition in fraud prevention. We've been doing this for many years, but one of the recent things that we've launched is the Fraud Prevention Registry, which is now launched and in production in the US. Is something that we're working to expand internationally. And one of the use cases there is actually what we're enabling data sharing between financial institutions and the telecom. And what I mean by that, there are, for example, those text messages that are phishing bank customers. And we capture, based on reports from banks, we capture the sender IDs of those text messages and the phone numbers that are in the body of the messages, which are used as a call to action by the fraudsters to, you know, then start the social engineering process. So we're capturing those numbers in real time, and we're distributing those numbers in real time to our fraud prevention registry customers. And this enables that type of communication to be stopped right away. No matter if at a CPaaS level, if at a telecom level, those messages or text calls, those voice calls can be stopped right away. So this type of fraudulent activities can be shut down pretty quickly.
Nima?
Yeah, actually similar as what Catalin mentioned, we are trying also to share all of the phishing sites that we are seeing in text messages or MMS messages with all the financial institutions and banks, and basically they are trying to shut down these phishing sites right away, and that's a very effective way for them to protect the customers who might click on those links in order to put their credential and become the victim of this type of phishing attacks. So we are receiving on day-to-day basis from either mobile operator or some of our CPaaS customers to put in touch us with the banks in order to share this type of information with them. So this is a good collaboration between the mobile operators as well as the financial institution. If this sharing of the data can be done in more real time versus on incident basis, it could be a very more effective way.
So the description mentions that fraudsters' tactics are becoming more coordinated and across industry. What are the most significant new or evolving fraud trends that necessitate a more unified defense? Like, what have you seen that's changed in the last year? I mean, with the AI's always been there, even though it's the new fresh term, but what have you seen in the last year or two that may have been accelerating some of these new tactics? Is there anything in particular that would necessitate a unified defense?
Right now, we are seeing the trend is a little bit shifting the barrier towards the MMS in order to include the logo of the banks. And that's why people might trust more when they are seeing the logo of these banks with the text messages inside of it. That's one of the things that we are recently see is increasing. The other one we are seeing is the image and the text is embedded inside the image. And the new phones has the capability to click on the links. So for that reason, that's a new way of also the spammer is trying to go. And the last emerging way that we are seeing is on the RCS. Lots of new attacks is coming from international destination towards, for example, Canadian mobile operators or the RCS. They're creating a group chatting. And then immediately they are sharing these phishing scam messages and then lifting the group. And the title of these group chats, for example, it says, as an example, RBC Bank, TD Bank, whatever is the case, or Canada Post. Those are the things that they're trying to do. So these are the new emerging threats that we are seeing recently become more trend towards the Canadian mobile operator as well as the US mobile operators.
So what do you think the barriers to entry are for crossing or for sharing data across the various industries?
So maybe I can speak to that. We led a working group for 6 months with 150 participants across sectors trying to figure out how do we share data. So in Canada, our privacy laws are principles-based. This is somewhat of a double-edged sword. So because they're principles-based, there's room for interpretation, there's flexibility in what you want to do and what information you want to share. At the same time, because of this flexibility, it's really hard to align amongst individual organizations on how you're going to share, what the baseline comfort for sharing is. And essentially through this working group, what we did was identified what we call real barriers and perceived barriers. So I will say that the perceived barriers are the barriers that are stopping us from actually sharing information. Everyone says all we need to do is share data, but no one goes far enough to say we need to share X data with this person for this reason at this time, and this is how the data is going to be retained. We need to get down to that level if you're ever going to get buy-in within your organizations, and that is the biggest perceived barrier. It is your individual organizations, privacy teams, legal teams, risk teams, other business lines that all have something to say about the way that you're using the data. In order to bypass that, you need to get specific, you need a key use case, and you need a partner that is willing to go through this journey with you. So this was mentioned a little bit earlier today, but we have successfully set up a pilot between an FI and a telco to share data, bad actor attributes. This is something that could have been done 10 years ago, but there was just never the drive and there was just never the level of precision that was required to get buy-in and bypass the industry barriers. So it's not about new technology, it's not about bypassing legislation, it's about getting agreement on what you're going to share, starting there and then expanding out.
Right, and a company like Twilio has data protection agreements, AUPs, and they're very strict, and we try to protect our customers' data. And at the same time, we know that, in the cases of fraud, we have to share, at least CP&I information, right? And so we're in the process of revisiting those just to, balance that out, right? Protecting customers, but also trying to protect, the channels and from being exposed to more fraud. But yeah, that's what would stop us regulatory-wise. I mean, every country has their own set of rules that does make it more complex, and so you actually have to go down to the country level and make it specific. And that's some of the things that we would struggle with, at times, right? From sharing customer name data, right? That's the PII, information we cannot share. But yeah, that.
Same for us. We cannot share the PII information, unfortunately, and this data is belonging to our mobile operator customers, and we have to oblige to our privacy agreement that we have with the mobile operator. That's the most things that is stopping us from sharing the data. If the mobile operator themselves is putting a platform in place that they can share among themselves this data, that's going to be the best approach in order to help us also to share with other industries this data.
Yeah. I've learned recently about cybersecurity groups that are created to share said information with good actors, like-minded companies in the space, and it sounds like we need more of that in our sort of telecom sector, and then with the banking industries as well, right? We need to make sure there is no bad actor that is in the group that would take that data and use it for harm. That is the key, though. How do we do that? Who is good, so.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that there is also a technical barrier that it's worth talking about, because for fraud prevention to be effective, it needs to be, the data needs to be shared in real time. It's not enough to exchange weekly reports, or it's not enough to do it incident-based. Fraudsters are cycling so quickly today through phone numbers, CPaaS providers, carriers. They search for the unprotected path to perform what they have to perform. And then the other thing is that there is a lot of data sharing that happens today, but it tends to be one-to-one. I think it's critical to switch to a model which is one-to-many or one-to-everyone, so that everybody can benefit from that piece of information and stop bad behavior across the ecosystem.
And just to add to everyone, I think the importance of sharing across sectors, especially when we're referring to fraud and scams, cannot be understated. Each industry holds a piece of the whole picture. It starts on a social media platform, or it starts on a telco. The social engineering happens there. There's switching to different platforms, different apps. There's a lot of steps along the way before the consumer makes the decision to hit send on a payment. There's certain points for intervention. We all have a role to play in sharing that information to be able to track and stop scammers throughout different points of the life cycle.
So what would be the most immediate and most impactful for a quick win? I know it's not quick. We've been talking about this for years, but it sounds like you guys are on the right path. You said that there's explicit definitions of what's needed to be shared. There's also regulatory issues, but where do you see a quick win? Is there anything specific that could enhance and speed this up as far as combating fraud?
So this is not going to be a revolutionary situation. I think sharing bad actor data between sectors, that's enough. That is the first step that we can take. So if I'm at a telco and I have my confirmed list of these are bad actors and I share them with the bank, anytime the bank opens up a new product, anytime a bank processes a transaction, they can check against this list to make sure this isn't a bad actor, and you can stop that person from re-victimizing someone else. I think it's simple in theory, but that to me is the first step, and that is the low-hanging fruit that we need to just align on.
Yeah, and another thing I've seen globally is, where you have somebody message a consumer with a callback number that is different than the original number, right? And so it's complex, right? Because we don't know who the originating provider is that allowed that message to go through, but somebody didn't do that check of, hey, there is a number embedded in this message that does not match the sender, right? And that number, they don't have the right to even state that number is a call-in number, right? So there's more of those filters that need to be done sort of industry-wide, and we all need to be, careful about that because it is what can happen very easily.
Yeah, just to add to that, so the title of our panel, the $1 billion blind spot, the $1 billion comes from an estimation from the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. That's across the entire world, all types of scams. But interestingly enough, they are listing there the channels that are used to perpetrate this fraud, and the telecom channel is number one there. And it's text messages, it's calls, it's OTT, and all that. So I'm saying that because I think the most effective way of disrupting this is actually focusing on the mobile communication in general. So in terms of a quick win, I think the sharing of phone number information, phone numbers that are associated or involved in fraud, that's a quick win because there is this big debate about what's personal data. Can we share names? Can we share bad actors? But I think in terms of the phone numbers are shared pretty widely across the ecosystem today for a large number of use cases. Just tagging the fraud risk to that, I think that's a pretty effective way of deploying something quickly.
And just to add to that, phone numbers are used everywhere. You use your phone number when you open up a bank account, use that same phone number, emails, etc. That's a great identifier and a great way to link a scammer throughout the life cycle.
And to add to that one, make the registration of the phone number very difficult. So if mobile operators is taking a little bit more serious action for registration and tie lots of SIN numbers or social security numbers to when they are registering these ones, so they know exactly how many SIM card has been purchased, for example, by these people, what's the method of the purchase, have this credit card or debit card has been used before or not, what's the history of it. So if they're making a little bit harder for people to access to the SIM cards, then they are trying to go away at least from these mobile operators to much easier one, and they're protecting their own brands as well. So that's another takeaway for that.
And I'll add, just because it's a unique problem in the US and Canada with +1 numbers, it's the only, countries where you can have what we call hosted SMS, right? Where you can have a different provider that does the messaging and then a different provider for the voice. That is not done globally. That is not a thing. So that requires even more, diligence when doing that KYC, KYT initiatives. We implement the 2FA step and we do it repeatedly. So we have to, because there's inviting more risk, right, when you have a setup quite like that, and it's where we've seen challenges with the banking and financial industries.
Well, with that, we've made some headway. We do have a big road ahead. The Fraudsters, like I said, it is a game of whack-a-mole, but we're started to head in the right direction. We just need to accelerate that by creating more precision around what we share and amongst who we share them. So with that, thank you for your time today. And does anybody have any questions for our panelists?
Hi, my name is Haitham and from Speech Logics. So my question is the international police doing their job of tracking these bad actors, at least from, I don't know, countries that they are originating these scam calls from?
So maybe I can take that. I will say it's difficult. We're already talking about the difficulty of sharing cross-sector domestically. Sharing across jurisdictions where law enforcement tends to be very under-resourced is quite difficult. So in terms of what we have been doing is working with other similar anti-scam alliances in other jurisdictions to understand how our law enforcement partners can actually work together. But unfortunately, the issue is that there is a problem to solve at home first. The future is cross-sector interoperability. If we look at the amount of fraud that is in Canada, a lot of it originates from different jurisdictions, It's all being done by organized criminals, scam compounds, et cetera, targeting developed nations. It's a problem. I think that there is some coordination. It's not to the level it needs to be. I think that there is a need to fix the issue at home before we start thinking across borders.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah. Just a follow-up here.
Yep.
So I was a victim myself, and unfortunately. So the money was transferred to an account in Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the RCMP, I opened a ticket and I got the money back. But they said, this is just a compensation. We never got, that was another victim, that they used their money, his account to deposit my money. And then they said, we will have to track and know who's the originator. He was a victim too. Again, I see it, odd of not RCMP not be able to even get that resolved within, I don't know, it's I think complicated, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it is complicated. And think about how fast a scam travels, how many platforms it touches, how many phone numbers, how many people are involved in a typical scam journey. The amount of time it takes to investigate and build a case from a law enforcement perspective to one particular scam, let's say you lose $50, it's going to cost $10,000 to investigate that scam and identify who the perpetrator is. So in terms of what we can actually do, and this is something that we're effectively doing today, is signal sharing. Let's start talking about trends of scams that we're seeing. If we're seeing the same types of scams targeting certain demographics, certain regions, certain banks, telcos, if we can put together that trend and we can do that link analysis between a scammer, because the scammer is never deploying just one scam, they're deploying tens of thousands at a time today. If we can do that link analysis and build enough of a case for law enforcement to have enough evidence to actually prosecute, that's where we need to be headed to, because as of right now, less than 2% of fraud cases are actually prosecuted in Canada because of lack of evidence. And there's also the fact that there is a time limitation on how you can prosecute fraud here in Canada. Often law enforcement needs more time than that.
Yeah, I just wanted a sense of the overall problem over here. I'm Shantanu, I'm from TELUS. What percentage of frauds broadly would you think would have a mobile touch point? Because there are various modes in which a fraud can happen. There are various sources and destinations. How big do you think the problem is when it comes to just mobile as a touch point somewhere in the chain?
So I don't have specific figures. I will say we know that SMS and phone calls, like how many people actually answer a phone call from an unknown number these days. It's obviously happening on these channels. I think that even if it does originate on a different channel, so let's say you see a scam on a YouTube comment, you're likely going to link that to your phone or your email. So there is mobile touch points throughout. I don't have specific stats, but I don't know if anyone on the panel does.
I don't have the specific stats, but yeah, it's lots of these scams are either originating from mobile operators or sometimes it's coming from data aggregators. So it depends on the origination.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.